Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about this news that has just caught my attention, which is the opening of a British elite school in Kenya. And you might have seen this report in the Business Daily. Why should this matter to us? Maybe you're thinking that it's a posh school, I'll never be able to afford the 600,000 per semester fee. But this video is going to tell you about why this should matter and what we should do about it. So welcome. So this school called Durham, and I hope I've pronounced it right, and even if I haven't, that doesn't matter. But it's a British school, and it's very prestigious. It is one of the oldest schools in Britain with a 600-year-old tradition. Now, what they have done is that they have sold their brand to people who are willing to invest in the school brand and then establish their own campuses where they are. So basically, what the schools have done is to franchise themselves, like McDonald's or like Burger King or Domino's. Usually, what happens is that people pay the school to use the name, and then the school stipulates how the campus must be built and what kind of standards are necessary, and basically keeps control of the school from Britain. And then the Kenyans will, or whoever it is who is investing here, will pay the school a certain amount of money every year to use the names. And that's how franchises for fast food work. And now it has come to the schools, and they're distributing these schools all over the world. So Durham has a campus in Doha, and now it has one in Nairobi. Why are these people spreading themselves like that? Is it just about the money? Of course it is, but we need to understand how this came about. Now, let's go to the 1980s. This was a time when the neoliberal agenda of privatizing all public services, privatizing schools, universities, service provision like water, healthcare, was being promoted by the World Bank and IMF. And the way they did it was to call countries to the UN or to WTO and make them sign contracts promising, or sort of agreements promising, that they would privatize their services. The reason why the West could blackmail, especially African countries, to do this was because, of course, after independence, they gave us loans, which we were, no surprise, unable to pay. So instead of demanding payment for these loans, this is what these countries did. They said, well, you have schools, you have hospitals, you have roads, you have other public works. Why don't you give them to us instead? And then we break them up and privatize them. So that's the basic economic agenda that was happening in the 1980s. And our elites, foolish as they are, they went and signed all these agreements without thinking about what it would do to their country. Now, around the same time, there was also what was called the General Trade Agreement, which was an arm of the WTO. And they came up with this agreement, which Kenya signed, I wonder why, and other African countries. And what the agreement aimed at was to make all the education institutions in these countries subject to business. But more than that, what Kenya and other countries signed up for was to make the people who have gone to school, the educated people, be open for business. So basically, they were saying all the countries that signed this agreement are agreeing to allow the people they trained to work anywhere in the world. Basically, the agreement was to turn the educated citizens of their countries into a product that could be marketed anywhere in the world. And you will notice that at around that time, that's when we started having a lot of Kenyans, very educated Kenyans, working abroad. But another part of this agreement was that the African countries would stop offering university education. So in 1986, the World Bank had the guts to invite vice chancellors of African universities to Harare in Zimbabwe, and there the World Bank proposed to the vice chancellors that they should close universities because Africans don't need university education. What we need is only primary school education, and that's what the World Bank was going to fund. Of course, this was not going to work because, first of all, you're telling vice chancellors to get themselves out of a job. But also, there's a lot of mischief, and it was not going to sell very well to Africans in their countries because an education minister can't come to Kenya and say, guess what, we are closing universities and you can't go to university anymore. That was not going to work. So, of course, the African governments didn't close their universities, but the World Bank found another way to undermine them. They said, don't fund universities. And it was around that time that now university education became more expensive. Like in I think it was 92, was when universities were told that they would not be getting stipends and that they would have to be paying fees in the public universities. So the World Bank found a way to arm twist African governments to defund public education and public universities. Now, what was the agenda in this case? It wasn't simply that Africans do not go to university. What they wanted and what they were doing through the WTO was to create education as a luxury item. The UK and the US, because English is their language and the English language is the dominant language of academia and business, they figured that they need to take advantage of this edge that they have over the rest of the world. And you remember also that most of the top-ranked schools and universities are in the UK and the US. So you're talking about, for example, the old universities like Oxford and Cambridge in the UK, or you're talking about the Ivy League, the Harvards, the Yales, the UPenns, which are in the US. So what the UK and the US governments wanted was to turn these institutions into a luxury item, meaning that all the elites all over the world would want to get an education in these institutions. But how do you force elites in other countries to come to your schools? You do it by forcing the home countries to defund education. So this defunding of our schools here in Kenya was about forcing our elites to seek education in UK and US schools. Now, it's not only by going to the US and the UK that you can now get access to this elite education. What they also did was to turn the names of their prestigious schools and universities into brands and offer these brands for franchise in different countries. So, for example, the Middle East has a lot of UK and US big names who have established their campuses there. And now you can see even Durham, forgotten the pronunciation, but this school is now in Doha and it is now here. The basic idea is to set American and British education as the standard for education, force other smaller countries which are weaker to defund their education and to break up their education systems so that the elites no longer want to go to school in their home countries or in local education systems, but to pay an arm and a leg to either study in American or British university schools here or to go abroad themselves. And this way, you keep all the world's elites on the same Anglo-American page. It's not only that our schools have been defunded and that we are now being given elite foreign schools here. And it's not only that there's a gap now between the rich who can afford the elite foreign schools and the locals who just have to do with the local education. What is also happening is that these schools are setting the standards for all schools and making governments force those standards on us. And that is why when people keep on saying, are these schools inspected? What is wrong? How come the government has not inspected the schools? Hey, those people are coming to inspect schools with booklets that were not written by us. They are bringing these booklets from abroad and coming to impose Western and foreign standards of education on our schools and turning teachers and lecturers into bureaucrats to ensure that we are following them. And then Kenyans think that these inspections are about quality. They're not about quality. They're about making sure that our schools are always playing second fiddle to schools in the US, the UK, and the rest of Europe. In this section, I'm going to answer the question, why does this matter? Number one, it makes our education more expensive because, like I said, when you are setting the standards of what you call good education according to foreign standards, then it means that the people who get the best education are the people who go to the foreign schools with the foreign names. And that has an effect on the rest of the country. It works in the same way like rents. You see, when we have these experts who pay dollar rents in Gigiri, it makes accommodation expensive across Nairobi, not just for the elites, because the standard for the best houses is being set by the people who can afford them. So that's the way the same thing that happens for our schools, that the schools are being set by standards that we can barely afford and that are not even ours. The other thing is that, like I've said, it turns teachers into bureaucrats because standards are being set abroad. Because our universities and schools are so-called not good at all, we are being benchmarked against foreign institutions, then the government turns itself into an inspector and a bureaucrat and stops taking care of education. Instead, it inspects us to make sure that we are following the standards set by others. The next thing is that because now it is foreign expensive schools that are setting the standards, then the local schools become more expensive and more corrupt. So what is going to happen in the long run is that even the elite public schools will be more competitive and people will become more desperate to enter them. And that desperation leads to exam fraud, bribery, exam cheating. So this allowing of foreign elite schools to come and set up shop here is going to corrupt our system. And if it corrupts our system, it's basically corrupting the rest of society. Another one is, of course, inequality. If the best schools, according to the best standards, are asking for fees of 600,000 as a term, what does that mean for Kenyans who can barely afford even school fees of 10,000? It means that the best education will go to the rich and the poor will be given the CBC and the TVET and whatever else you can scrounge from the education system. Now, we can't say that we don't care that we don't need this education. Do you know why it matters? Because when it comes to the marketplace and employment, the people who will be called qualified, quote unquote, are the people from those schools. So even if you work hard in a local school, it won't matter because your certificate will compare very poorly to the people who could afford to attend a British school. And we will be told that this is quality. And this is how the elites and their children will keep on running Kenya, because they are going to the schools they can afford, and they are the decision makers in government who will say, this is what we consider quality, and quality is a certificate from Durham and Oxford. It's not a certificate from Athi River High School. The next thing is that this kills creativity, because we will not be able to improve and modify and have a good Kenyan education system from our own ideas, because the standards are being set elsewhere, and the people who should, the decision makers who should be allowing us and giving us the space to innovate in our education system, they went to British schools. So those are the standards they are setting. They don't think that we can set our own standards. So it's going to kill creativity, not only in terms of how we think of education, but even the creativity within the system as our kids are going to school. They will not be allowed to be creative. But I'm just going to offer, I'll call them proposals, because they're not really solutions. This will take a lot of work. The first thing I would say is that we need a moratorium on the establishment of foreign branded and foreign system schools in Kenya. A moratorium means not a complete stop, but a pause. We hit pause, and then we Kenyans have a conversation about the education system we want. We keep postponing this problem and keep talking about colonial ideas like TVET and refuse to have a conversation. Let the bureaucrats and the academics stop hiding behind titles and come out and start having an honest conversation about what education is and what it means for Kenyans. The second thing is that we need a public education system. Kenyans, we cannot keep avoiding this problem. You might think, some of you, that you can keep pushing the problem away. After all, your kid has an advantage. They are going to an elite public school, and you don't mind them being bullied until kingdom come. But I'm telling you, if this trend goes on, even that posh public school, old name that you're competing with, that you are proud of, will be competing with the Durhams, which have ties to Oxford. So this myth you have that you can keep having advantages forever is not going to work. One day it will get out of control, and even if you force and beat your kid to get an A in whatever CBC or KCSE exam you get, it will still be wholly unequal. And anyway, with all the big shots taking their kids to these British schools and employing their own kids and grandkids, it means your kids don't have a chance, whichever school they went to. So we need a public education system. Some of you have been telling us about Sijui Norway, Sijui, I don't know, is it Sweden or where? One of those Nordic countries, what they say is that nobody is supposed to pay fees for education. That means that if Durham wants to come and still give us a school here, they can do it, but they know that people are not going to pay fees. That's one way to do it. But of course, on top of that, you add that you put political pressure on whatever government you elect to provide public education. The other thing that we need to do as Kenyans is to change the way we think about education and work. One of the reasons why these elite schools have such a stranglehold on us is because the certificates open doors for employment and business and all that. it wouldn't matter to us which school we went to if it didn't matter to employers and to government and to all those people. So we need to open up the system. We need to divorce, I think. We need to divorce schooling from employment so that if employers want very well-trained people, they figure it out. But we need to have an honest conversation about the way employment is making education so cutthroat and so expensive. Now, can you do that? Because this will require a rethinking of what it means to be human. Because why do you want an edge over somebody else? Why does it make you proud when your kid is number one and, 7 out of 10 kids cannot advance in school? What pride is there in living in a country like that? Do you love other Kenyans enough to want a better education system for them? That's the question I'm going to leave you with. I hope you will find love in your hearts to care that all Kenyan children get an education, and we finish with this obsession with foreigners and their standards, which are expensive, and it's just another means to control our resources. Because when you have elites being educated in foreign schools, it means that they're listening to foreigners and they can never listen to us. And then you see the mediocrity that we now see in our governance. It will just continue because the people who will be making decisions have never learned where we learn. So I hope you find it in your heart to want a better education system for not just your child, but all children. After all, your child is going to work with other children, is going to marry, is going to have to live with those other Kenyans. So you can't we can't keep our heads in the sand any longer. We must vote like parents, and we must demand education that is centered on us, on our values, on our cultures, on our histories, and on what we want. Thank you for watching.